What's up, guys? Today we're going to go over how to make a sheep farm. So this design is essentially an expansion of the very common 1x1 design, where we have a grass block that the sheep can eat and grow their wool. An observer faces into the grass block that then goes and triggers a dispenser with shears in it. The dispenser will then automatically shear the wool off of the sheep. We have a minecart hopper going down under the grass blocks that can then collect all of the wool and put it somewhere that we would like it to go. In the back, I have also done a bunch of hoppers that feed the shears into the dispensers that come from an Autocrafter that we can feed in raw iron. And this part is completely optional. I think it's very convenient because I don't like having to upkeep some of the automation of the farms. But the durability on the shears go very low, so it might be overkill in some situations. But with that, let's jump right in. All right, so for the materials you'll need a chest, which is the chest that goes in front, and this can be as many chests as you would like. You're going to need 5 hoppers, 4 of them being the ones in front, and if you build down, you're going to need more chests and hoppers than this. An additional hopper for the hopper minecart. You're going to need 5 rails. I think that meant 4 rails. Sorry. 4 rails, 18 power rails. You can get away with replacing some of the power rails with normal rails. You just have to be careful with the number of redstone torches you have down here. You're gonna need 21 redstone, 2 redstone torches if you keep the rails and everything the same as I did. You're gonna need 2 redstone repeaters, 9 dispensers, 9 observers, 18 grass blocks. And these are using the lengths of the farm that I did. If you make it longer, you're going to need additional pieces of all of these things. So if you make it 15 blocks, be prepared to have some of these increased a little bit. Or 15 or 13 or however many blocks you do. 18 grass blocks, which can be dirt. Just make sure that grass can grow up to them. Because I like having these grass blocks here so that these ones grow faster and the sheep will eat them sooner than if they're just eating dirt. You're also going to need opaque blocks that are important for the redstone functionality, as well as some building blocks, which I like to use glass, and I also use some wooden planks for that in this case. If you opt out of using the auto-crafting stuff, you're going to need some shears in order to put into the dispensers. And then you're, of course, going to need the sheep that go into the farm. If you do want to do the auto-crafter part of it, you're going to need additionally 9 furnaces, 20 more hoppers. So that's in addition to the other 5 that you need. You need 2 comparators, 2 repeaters, 11 more redstone, an autocrafter, a barrel, which can also be a chest or something. I just like the look of the barrels, and a chest. And those are for, this is like something you don't need to interact with yourself. And then you have a chest that you do interact with to put the iron ingots into. All right, so the first thing that I usually like to do is place the grass blocks that the sheep stand on. So that will be 3 blocks up. So we'll go 1, 2, and then it will be the 3rd block. I'm going to go 4 blocks off on either direction as well for a total of 9. 2, 3, 4. You're welcome to go further. I would say keep the maximum to 15 blocks, unless you're okay with refreshing redstone signals without like creating infinite loops and stuff. Mainly, we have to run redstone dust all the way across the length of it, and more than 15 blocks, the signal will no longer reach all the way down. So you'll run into that issue. You're welcome to do more, though. It'll just be a little bit more work. Okay, so with my 9 grass blocks, we're going to first place observers that face into the grass blocks on the same level. All right, like that. So they're facing out. We're then going to place opaque blocks behind them on the end that the redstone is coming out of. They have to be opaque because we need the signal to go through the blocks. So if you use like glass or something, it won't work. And then under, so like 1 block down and 1 block over, we're going to do another line of blocks. Whatever block this is, doesn't matter. It can be glass if you want to. And we're just going to place redstone dust across it. Okay. So you should be able to like, so when the observers get triggered, you should see the redstone, flash. Okay. So the next thing I want to do is place the dispensers. These should face into the grass. So they should be facing the direction that the grass are facing. And we're going to place it on top of the observers. And we're going to do all of them. I guess there's nothing wrong with filling them with shears now. So I'm going to do that now. And if you're making the Autocrafter part, you don't really need to do this at this stage. I just kind of like to fill them like with one just to make sure that it's working before I commit and do all of the rest of it. So I'm going to fill with shears. You don't need to do this now. Okay. So off of this platform, it doesn't really matter which side you're on. I'm going to do it on this side. I'm going to go one out, and I'm going to place a redstone repeater. And this is just to refresh the signal. We're going to place a block in front of it like this. We're going to put redstone on top of it, and then we're going to build a staircase that goes to the block on top of the dispensers. Whoops. And we're going to place just like opaque blocks all the way across the dispensers like that. On the block that's leading up to the dispensers, we're going to place another repeater. So right before the first one, we're going to have a repeater right here. And then we're going to place redstone dust in all of the rest of them. And when I say the maximum is 15, this is what I mean. If this is longer than 15 blocks, then the redstone signal up here won't reach. And you need to refresh the signal without creating an infinite loop, which I always find very difficult. I feel like it shouldn't be that difficult, but it is. And the reasoning is if you put a repeater here, then this dispenser will never trigger. And that's a problem sometimes. Anyways. Okay. So now that we have that part, we can build the rail system under it. And I'm just going to do all the like technical stuff before we fill in the glass blocks and stuff like that. So under the grass blocks, we want to place one block up so that there's only one block in between it and the block you're placing. The grass and the block you're placing, to be more concise. So that the rail can reach the wall on top of the grass blocks. I'm going to go in. So on the like end that the redstone's on, I'm going to go that direction. And we're going to go all the way out. And actually, I totally forgot. We need to place hoppers here so that they go under the rails. So I'm going to find my middle, which is this block. And I'm going to carve out 3 of these. You could probably get away with 1. Like you probably only like need 1 hopper here, but I do 3 just in case. And then what I'm going to do is place a chest that is 2 blocks out. And mainly the reason for that is because we have glass here, and then we're going to have grass blocks right here, so that the grass can spread. So then we have a 1 out so that we can access the chest without any complications. Okay, so into this chest, we're going to place a hopper that faces in. We're going to place another hopper that faces into that hopper, and then 2 that face into the middle. You want to make sure that they're facing in and not down, or else they won't make it to your chest. Whoops. Okay. So next, we're going to want to place rails over this little thing. And actually, I went to the edge of the grass, and I think this is perfectly fine. I'm OCD, and I don't trust that if it rounds a corner, if it's going to always collect the wool on top of this block, even though it probably will. So I usually go 2 out for the corners. But you're totally welcome to just like keep the corners under the blocks here. So then I run power rails all the way across one edge, and then I round the corner. I place power rails across the other one. And I don't know why the end always does this to me. I have to like round it and then do it like that. If gold is an issue, you can probably get away with like sectioning it off where you have a bunch of normal rails in between small numbers of power rails like this. That's totally fine. Just make sure that the minecart like runs continuously and doesn't run out of steam after a while. And then we have to power all of our power rails. Whoops. When you use the blocks, I like to put torches under the blocks. So when you use the blocks, if you're going to power them like this, make sure that they're opaque. If you make it with glass, you're going to have to power the power rails by like putting a torch next to it or something like that. And that can cause complications with the redstone. But however you do it, power the power rails. I would say make sure it doesn't interfere with the redstone back here. So like with what I just did, if I put a torch here, it just powers this, and that's not what we want. And then also make sure you don't power a block that's next to these hoppers. Like if I were to put my torch here, it would power this block, which then disables my hopper. Like if I put something here, it's not gonna grab it anymore. But if I get rid of it, it will work as intended. So make sure that your blocks that are powering the power rails are far enough away from your other redstone stuff so that it doesn't interfere. Okay. So the next thing we want to do is put a minecart hopper there. That'll just go in circles forever. Okay. So at this stage, we can actually spawn some sheep in my case, or in survival, you can populate it with like luring sheep into it with like trapdoors and stuff. So I'm going to fill in some blocks. And, well, actually, I forgot one thing. So I'm going to put glass blocks here. And technically, you don't need these. I like the look of it, but you don't need this layer. But I'm going to put grass blocks under them. Mainly, I'm going to put grass blocks diagonally down and in front of the other ones that the sheep stand on. And this is so that the grass can spread to the blocks that the sheep eat. And I find that just makes it work a lot faster. I think it works without that, but it goes really slow, I think. So we want like a source grass block here that can spread up. I put glass in front of it, but you don't need this one. But you do need at least 2 blocks above where the sheep will stand. Because otherwise they'll jump out, and that's annoying. Okay. This doesn't have to be glass either. If you have a block in between here, you want to make sure it's glass so that you don't like turn it into dirt by accident. Mine didn't turn into dirt. That's actually wild. Yeah, you don't want to turn the dirt. So I use glass. And then make sure that there's at least 2 blocks of glass up so that the sheep can't get out. So this is all you need for the actual sheep farm if you don't want to do the auto crafting stuff. So in my case, I'm going to spawn in sheep. And I'm going to make sure I spawn in a sheep. I screwed that up. Oh, I'm sorry, sheep. I need to spawn one in 1 per block. I would say keep it to 1 per block because a dispenser with shears can only shear 1 sheep at a time. So if you have more than like 1 per block, you might run into the issue where some sheep have wool and they can't get sheared just because there's too many of them. I'm sure I'm wrong. Like I think statistically you could probably put more, but I'm just like paranoid. You're welcome to try it though. Like I have 9 blocks. You could put like 12 or 15 sheep in there or something and see if that works. Okay. So in this instance, one of my grass blocks just grew and it's shearing all of them. I would say if you get sheep in here and nothing's happening, go back here and activate your your dispensers a bunch of times and make sure that they're all sheared initially so that they'll eat the grass blocks and then the grass blocks will trigger everything and that things will get moving along. Okay. So yeah, in this case, we have all the sheep in here. If you want to lure one in survival, which I'm assuming is what you're doing, I would recommend putting a, where is it? Functional blocks, maybe? I want trapdoor. I would recommend putting a trapdoor up here. And then you can either use a lead and just like drag them in. Even with a lead, I don't think you need a trapdoor. Or you wave food in front of them. I forget exactly which food it is. It might still be wheat, but it might be like carrots or something else. But if you lure them in with food, they won't necessarily get dropped into the hole unless you have trapdoors to trick them that it's not a hole. So if you're pulling them in with food, make sure you have trapdoors there just to make sure that they come in. But however you get them in there, we have them in there and we can see if it's all working. I killed some, so I have meat in there. You shouldn't have meat in there normally. But we can see that it collected all of the wool that they shed, and that part is looking good. Whoops. I bumped my mouse. So at this stage in the video, this is all you need for the sheep farm if you don't care about doing the auto crafting stuff. I'm going to do the auto crafting stuff next. All right, so for the auto crafting, we're going to need a bit of hoppers. So what we want to do is place hoppers on the back of these dispensers and make sure that they're facing into the dispensers. And you can do that by holding shift and right clicking on the dispenser that you're wanting to face it into. And you want to make sure that they're all facing into the dispensers, right? And otherwise they won't go into it. And then next, what we want to do is place another layer on top of them that face across. So we want to place them into each other like so. I have to hold shift as well. I'm gonna get rid of this block. I think we might need another block out. Let me consult my screenshot. Yeah, okay. We go another block out like this on top. So that we can like get around other redstone and not have it interfere. Next, I'm going to put furnaces on top of all of my not used hoppers. And this is just for disabling their ability to look for entities on top of them constantly, because that can add up and lag your world down if you have too many hoppers that are open to the world. This can be any container. I find furnaces are very cheap though. On this last one, we are going to place a barrel. And the reason for the barrel is because I'm not using it as a chest, and I kind of like how it's a full block. This can be any container that can hold shears. A chest works perfectly fine. I don't know if a chest would have different redstone mechanics. I don't think it would, because it has the same number of slots. So then on this barrel, what we want to do is we want to face an Autocrafter into it, which we can do by going 2 blocks out, and we place an Autocrafter while we're like on this end, and we want to make sure it's facing into the barrel. Which you can see if this little thing is on the side of the barrel, make sure it's on the same side as well, on the other side, I mean. So yeah, we want to face it into that. And then on top, we're going to place another hopper, and then we're going to place a chest. And this is where the iron goes in. I cannot stress this enough. Do not put the iron in yet, because it's really annoying to work with if the redstone isn't in place yet. Put the iron in last, because every time I did this, it was really annoying and it was really messy. Okay, so now what we want to do is on this side of so like on the back side, and I guess it doesn't really matter which side you do this on, but I just like putting the more ugly looking one in the back. We want to place a block diagonally down so that we can put a comparator that faces away from the Autocrafter, so that it reads the contents of the crafter. Speaking of which, in the crafter, we want to disable all the slots that shears don't use. So I just disable all of these except for these 2. Yeah, make sure those are disabled. Okay. Next, what we do is we make a ring where we go 2 out, and then we go 4 or 3 out, I guess, so that it's 4 on the side. And then we go back, and then we circle back around to the Autocrafter. I'm going to place a block under this for aesthetic purposes. Okay. So now what we're going to do is place redstone dust all the way along this. And why does that have... Oh yeah, right, okay. I forgot that when you disable slots, it counts it as if the slot is full. So there's 7 redstone signal here, and I was confused because I was like, we didn't put anything in here. Why is it showing a signal? That's why. Okay, so we do the redstone dust all the way around, and then we put a repeater that faces into the Autocrafter. And the reason this works is that we have 7, and then when there's 1, so 8 and then 9, the 9th redstone will be this one, and then it will trigger the repeater, which then tells this to craft. And it'll just do that over and over and over and over again. We also have to make a disabler, because the Autocrafter will keep crafting shears even if everything is full. And what will happen is it will drop it on the ground, and it'll just waste all your iron. So what we want to do is place a redstone dust that, sorry, not on this side. Okay, we want to place a block here, and this has to be an opaque block, because we need to read the block behind it, which is the barrel, with a comparator. So we put a comparator that faces away from this block, and it will still read our barrel. And then we place an opaque block that's in front of the comparator. And then I place redstone dust next to that block on the side. So go to the side, we place redstone dust on top of it. And then we do a redstone repeater right here. And then we do redstone dust here. And the reason that what this does is when this has a shear in it, so any item, I guess a non-stackable item, it will trigger the comparator to turn on by like a signal strength of 1 or something. It'll go into this block, which then turns this on, and then this will tell the Autocrafter, it'll just saturate the Autocrafter, and the crafter won't do anything because it's saturated. And what I mean by saturated is that this is just on, and the Autocrafter only triggers when the signal going in turns off and then back on. If it's on constantly, it'll just sit there just like a dispenser, and a dropper will do. Okay, so this should be all we need now to dump all of our iron in. Fingers crossed I don't screw it up. So we should see that this crafts a bunch of shears. It waits for both of them to be in there so that we don't end up with a bunch of iron nuggets, because that'd be annoying. Okay. We can wait for this to craft all of the shears, but essentially what should happen is that it'll craft all of the shears, And then when all of the hoppers and stuff and the dispensers fill up, the barrel will end up with a single shear in it, and that will trigger this to get disabled. And I don't really know if I want to sit here and wait for that, so I think I'll just cut the video just to make sure that that works. So what happened is the barrel filled up with the single shears. The comparator turned on, and then it turned on this redstone signal. What I said about it saturating the Autocrafter isn't actually 100% true. I totally broke it, and I totally didn't fix it. Okay. That didn't happen. Okay. So what I said about it saturating the Autocrafter with the signal, so that is why it shuts off, is not actually right. What happens is that this powers the Autocrafter, which actually just disables the hopper entirely. I'm just going to move this back in here. It disabling the hopper does the same effect, where the Autocrafter is not able to craft anything anymore. That's actually better. If you just disable the Autocrafter, what will happen is that these two slots will fill all the way up. And then this won't work properly anymore. It only works if there's exactly like one item in each one of these slots. So you can also, if you're really paranoid, like I probably would be if I totally didn't just like miraculously make it work without actually knowing, is if I were to replace this block up here, right? So then this goes directly into the hopper, and now it actually disables the hopper entirely. I don't know if in Bedrock Edition Minecraft it would work the same way, so you might want to do this instead of putting a block down, but a block down works perfectly fine. So in this case, it disables it, and then we can make sure that it works by taking some shears, and I'm going to throw these away. We can take some shears and like throw them on the ground just to make sure that it crafts shears, and then it stops again when it is full. So it did. So we can see that everything's working properly, and now we have a fully functional sheep farm that should be as automatic and as long-lasting as your iron is in here. And I guess your storage space as well. Alright guys, that'll be it for this video. I apologize for stumbling so much. I don't know why today was so hard for recording. I took like 40 takes for each one of the takes, and I took the best one, and even the best one had a lot of stumbles, so I don't know what was up with that. Anyways, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope to see you next time.